Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Thiagu Palaniappan. Welcome to this Badgerland user group event here. We are going to be talking about the Creo Design Essentials overview. Like Deb mentioned earlier, we've seen that many customers are not aware of the new base license. There are a lot of extensions that are already available for you. It used to be purchasable license back in the old days, or at least before, prior to this new packaging. And in my experience of teaching customers training classes or consulting with customers, I've seen a very good percentage of the customers were not aware that this is already included. Sometimes I thought, in the next 45 minutes or so, we'll do a quick overview of those base package extensions that are already included for you. It used to be an add-on package before, back in the days prior to this new packaging. I think most of you may know me since I've presented in this Badgerland user group before, but just to quickly introduce myself, I'm a mechanical engineer background, is mechanical engineering, and I've been using the old Pro Engineer and now the Creo for the last 25 plus years. Started in '96 and worked in the industry for a good part of my career. And currently I work at TriStar. Those are not aware of who TriStar is, just a quick intro about our company. We are a company that helps manufacturing companies adopt software systems and processes just to help enable better and more efficient product development, right? And we do this by being the largest worldwide resellers for PTC products. We are headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm based out of the Chicagoland area. I've been here for 20 plus years now. So I may have presented in the past with other Badgerland user group, and it used to be live, and now we're doing it virtually. So we do have our team spread across the United States and Canada, helping out with eventual implementation, certified training, fully aligned with the PTC product line and the software they sell, along with some custom solutions as well. Okay, so it's a quick intro about the company. This is the one, my agenda mainly was, I know it's, I usually pack up a lot of information in my webinars, but I thought everybody should at least be aware of the new packaging that PTC has for Creo. The base package, which they call it Creo Design Essential, is what you're seeing on screen. And that's what I'll focus on, right? So there's a good chance that pretty much most of you currently, your companies are having or running this Creo base package that I'm highlighting, and I'm zooming in here. In the past, it used to be, your basic core areas like part modeling, assembly, drawing, sheet metal, what have you. All that is Creo parametric base license, and then you had to buy piping and cabling or FMX, or there's collaboration extension for importing and updating Inventor SolidWorks files. Mannequin extension, they call it human factors extension. So I thought of doing a quick overview of all of this. Obviously, each one of these extensions could itself be its own webinar, but I thought at least just to go over a few of them, do a high-level overview and see if there are any questions towards the end. You could even start typing your questions, and I'll try to see the questions as and when they appear in the chat. Or we could open up, we can also open up do a Q&A, since it's a smaller group I'm thinking today. We could also do, can unmute and ask questions towards the end. I'll try to leave at least 10-15 minutes towards the end with some Q&A. So first of all these extensions, like I said, if your license are Creo Design Essentials, which is the base package, they call the T1 package right there, you already own all these, right? So I've seen a good percentage of the customers are not aware that, okay, the T1 license, you already have the full Intelligent Fastener extension, you already have the Render Studio extension, piping and cabling of the PCX license, Design Exploration extension, flexible modeling or FMX for direct editing. So we'll do a quick overview of some of them, some of the popular ones. We may not have time to do everything, but at least a high-level overview. First one, I want to talk about the collaboration extension. So I think most of you may be aware, starting Creo 3, PTC does allow you to bring in non-Creo files directly into Creo, right? Without the need of any licenses. So you can import or open Inventor, SolidWorks, CATIA, and NX files, right? That's been there since Creo 3. You no longer have to use a neutral file like a step file or an IGES file, right? But once you bring that in, what happens if the original source file that you brought in was changed in the CAD authoring tool like SolidWorks or an Inventor, you have this collaboration extension license that they're including now with this Creo Design Essentials, which allows you to automatically update if that original CAD file or non-Creo file that you had brought in was changed in the original CAD system. It could be CATIA or it could be SolidWorks or Inventor, but they do include the SolidWorks or Inventor collaboration extension, these last two items that I've listed here. And you also have the ability to save as or export for a Creo assembly to a SolidWorks assembly, for example, if you have that SolidWorks collaboration extension. So the first 2 points, bullet points on import and open is included. Everybody has it. The last two required a purchasable license, which is included now with your base package. And I just wanted to highlight that one. Now, what happens once you bring it in? How would you make changes to it, right? It's a non-Creo file. Here's an example. I'm just quickly running through this. I'll just do a quick demo in a bit here. But once you bring in that non-Creo file, how would you make changes to it? Because it doesn't bring in feature history, obviously, it just brings in the geometry and the component or the assembly structure. The constraints are all set to fixed, so you can still make changes to it using flexible modeling extension or FMX. Some of you may have heard of it. This also used to be a purchasable module when PTC introduced it initially. Then they started including in many of their packages. Now this is also included in the Creo Design Essentials, wherein you're just looking at the geometry and you're editing the geometry. You're not looking at a feature definition, you're just editing the geometry, right? Wherein you're doing some feature recognition, maybe you're identifying rounds and chamfers, maybe identifying patterns that might be done in a different CAD system, and you're able to make that change inside of Creo, okay? So before I move on to further here, just a few more slides here, just to kind of show you the typical capabilities that you have inside of FMX once you bring in a non-Creo file. It could be step file, IGES file. You could still do your import data doctor fixing, right? If you run into some issues where it's not a watertight model and has some gaps, you can work on that. But once you bring it in, you'll be able to do some shape recognition. And then once you recognize it as a boss, for example, a cut, or even as a round or a chamfer, then you are allowed to edit it, even though when you brought it in, you didn't have a feature per se when you brought it in, right? It's just the geometry that's brought in. So it's I can also see this a use case for FMX if you're more using simulation and you don't want to go back and suppress some Creo features or defeaturing. You can quickly use a remove tool inside of FMX to quickly get rid of geometry for some downstream activity like FEA for meshing purposes, for example, right? You can also make some late state design changes using FMX, right? So those are two of the collaboration extension and FMX helpful with importing and working on non-Creo files. It also works on existing Creo files, right? But if you have an existing Creo file, you would rather change the feature rather than the geometry, right? So before I move on to the rest of the extensions, I want to do a very quick high-level demo here on that extension. And then we'll just look at the other extensions too in a minute here. So I have Creo 8 open. In our last webinar, we probably looked at what's new in Creo 8. So let me just open up an assembly that I have here. Let's see here if I go into, I'm going to open up a simple assembly first. It's a Creo assembly right now that I'm opening. And let's imagine this is a Creo assembly, but I need to assemble or work on a component or assemble a component that was designed in a different CAD system like SolidWorks or Inventor, right? As you know, starting Creo 3, you're able to do a file open, and you are able to open those different file types in here, right? Many of us are used to step files and IGES file. That still works. During my industry days, I used to sometimes get better luck with step compared to IGES. It used to vary depending on how complex the geometry was. But instead of using neutral files, if whoever's sending you the file, if they are okay to send the native file, I would rather just try opening the SolidWorks part or assembly, the inventor part or assembly, right? You have Solid Edge, CATIA, all of this, right? You don't need any type of license for that. That's been there for some time, since Creo 3, actually. So all you have to have is Creo 3 with the base license, and you should be able to open that. So that's what I'm going to do here. In my assembly, I'm going to assemble maybe a SolidWorks part real quick. Let's see here if I could go to, so sometimes it's in the wrong order. I've seen that. There's my inventor part assembly. There's my SLDPRT. And I just prepped a SolidWorks file, SLDPRT file, the brake rotor, let's say. It's being done by a different business unit, and then they're working on SolidWorks, and they've created that part. And I'm going to open it, right? So I'm not going to even import it. There's a difference between import versus open, right? As you can see here, if you import, it's immediately getting converted to a Creo part file. But I don't want to create two different business objects now. The file that they sent me, and then I'm converting it to a Creo part file. I'm able to just do the open, wherein I want to maintain that native file as is for now until I choose to make a change. Maybe I might be building some references around it, or maybe I might make, I might make a change to it. So I'm going to just open that SolidWorks file. And what you have in your model tree is your typical Creo assembly on the left, as you can see. And then your SolidWorks file SLDPRT is staying as this, as you can see there, right? So it's just geometry. If I expand that, will I get the feature tree? Absolutely not, right? It's just giving you just the geometry. So you still have your SolidWorks ID #1, and you can use your import data adapter to fix things. It's just the geometry, okay? It's not the feature history from SolidWorks. So, and then, I'm just doing my regular assembly work here. Maybe I'm just going to go insert this guy here, and maybe just put some regular mate references here, coincident, right? Just okay with it right now, and it's fully fixed. The color tells me the fully constrained using assumptions, it says, right up there. And you can see the dashboard, it's a lot better in Creo 8 compared to before. They're nicely grouped up there. But anyways, let's just get through that. And right now I have what I would call this as a cross-platform design intent type of scenario, where I have files from NX, I have files from an IGES file, I have Creo files, I also have SolidWorks file in here. And now let's say, I'd like to make a change to it, or I'd like to do some feature recognition on this, right? It's a simple part, right? Obviously, it's not a very complex part. It looks like a straightforward part, but I'd like to identify the pattern of the hole, the pattern of these cuts in here, right? I'm able to go and use, that's when I can make use of the FMX capability instead of Creo, where I'm able to go activate this part, right? Just like you would activate any part in Creo assembly. I'm just activating the solid part. Everything else is grayed out. It's even dimmed in here with a new interface. You can see how it dims everything, kind of aligning to the graphics window pretty much. And then I'm able to go to flexible modeling. It's available in part mode and sheet metal mode, right? So even if somebody sends you a sheet metal part or a thin part that was done in some other CAD system, you should be able to bring it in. And then I can do some shape recognition, do geometry search, and then do some transformation editing there. So for now, I'm not going to make a change. I'd like to just select some geometry. All these are thought of as geometry, right? It's not a feature per se. And I'm able to do some shape recognition here, right? I could say, hey, you want to identify the cut. It identified those continuous surfaces as a cut. And I could say, okay, I want to search for patterns, right? I click on this binoculars icon right here and do a pattern. And what it's doing right now is it's just identified the pattern. It's identified that it's an axis pattern, even though it was done in SolidWorks. And I have even the option to edit them, right? I can go to options and I could say allow editing, and I can even edit if required. But right now I just want to leave it as, I don't want to edit the pattern itself. I'm okay with it as long as it's identifying as a pattern. That's okay. I'm kind of featureizing it right now. Okay. So if in my model tree, I've created my first feature through FMX, or flexible modeling extension, which, like I said, is included, right? They're calling it flexible modeling, but I would call it editing. It's really a geometry editing tool, right? PTC acquired a company many of you know called Co-Create, about 7-8 years ago. It's very popular in Europe, and it's a direct modeling software. So they have some of those technology inside, and that's what you see here. See how it is showing up as members. It's not features, it's just geometry for it, right? Same thing, I could do it on the whole, for example. I probably want to just identify that as a cut, obviously, and then I can just go and do another pattern recognition here. It picked up that pattern as well. So I could use some reference pattern in my assembly when I'm going to assemble my hardware or bolts and screws and whatnot, right? So you get the idea here. So I've done some couple of recognition here, but I'd like to make a change. Maybe these slots, or I need to change the diameter of the radius of the hole, for example. I may need to change the angle of this. And even though I don't have the feature tree, how could I change that? You do have a couple of features here, like you can move by dimension, modify analytic, you can edit the round, chamfer, things like that on the geometry, right? So I should be able to go and edit this hole right now. And when I select the hole, right, in here, I should be able to go to, I know I can use a mini toolbar up here. You could go modify analytic. As soon as I show my intent to change, you see how the system is saying timeout. I allowed you to keep it as a SolidWorks file until now, but now you're trying to change. As soon as I show my intent to change, it is going to force you to convert it. So we would call this on-demand conversion, where you may be importing a SolidWorks assembly, but you may not want to edit every single part of that SolidWorks assembly if you think about it. So I'm going to go convert, right? I'm going to just convert the file, and what is it doing right now is it's saying converting automatically. I have some advanced options to change the name and everything. I'm going to leave it same. And what it's doing right now is it's the same geometry, but it's now a Creo file with that same name, brake rotor SW file, right? So now that it's a Creo file, I should be able to go back to flexible modeling, and I should be able to go and say, okay, let's do a modify analytic, and I can change that, the radius or whatever it is identified. But when I change it, I don't want to change only that geometry. I'd like to take advantage of the pattern that we recognize, and I can go to options, and I should be able to go and say, okay, let's go use the pattern recognition that we did, the second pattern recognition, and I'm able to make that change. It's almost like changing the diameter, literally not changing the diameter, but the radius. It's analyzing the geometry, and it's changing on all four holes because it is identified as a pattern. Same thing goes with this, right? If I want to go and say, okay, I want to go identify that cut in there, right? And then I would probably want to do a move, and I want to move by dimension, or I could change the radius of that cut, or I could say move by dragger. I should be able to go to my options, and I should be able to say, okay, let's go recognize, take advantage of the pattern that we recognized earlier, and I should be able to go and kind of modify it. And as I change that, you see how it updates as though it was done instead of Creo. I know a simple part like this you could have redone in Creo, but for the most part, this FMX really works. It's been there since Creo 2. It's nothing new. It's just that it's included in the base package these days, right? So I did a little bit of work here, right? We did some couple of feature recognitions in here. We did some editing, etc. Right? That's what we've done so far. Let me get back to my assembly. Now I might also want to assemble. Maybe I want to assemble some components in here. So maybe I want to go and assemble this. I had a fastener bolt in here somewhere. So I probably want to go to separate windows. It's just easier to assemble it, right? So I can just go and pick some geometries in here. This is where I talk about cross-platform design intent, where I'm essentially, constraining a Creo model to a SolidWorks geometry. And now I should be able to just set that to coincident, just applying a regular constraints. And now I should be able to just go pattern it, and it should pick up the reference pattern just like you would have done in Creo, right? There it is. Now let's say I've done all this, and now I'm probably getting a notification, or maybe the business unit that was working, or the partner that was working on this in SolidWorks, they have done a change to it, right? And I'd like to update that model now. So do I have to redo? In the past, you had to redo all this work because you're essentially going to re-import a different version of that file, and there is no way to update that change. Let me mimic that with the folder here. I know this could also be done inside of the Windchill common space if you had the workgroup manager for SolidWorks, but right now I'm not connected to Windchill. Let me go into my folder where I have these files. And if I go into, let's see here, the folder, I had created another folder with an updated model, another file actually, the same name, of course. And I'm going to put it back in my, in this folder. I'm going to replace it in my folder where I had the SolidWorks files. And now I'm interested to know if there is a change in here, and I may have several files like these, several imported files like these with an import feature ID. Is there a way to check if you have any outdated ones? So you could go use the ATB, which is an old Creo Engineer feature. Some of you may have known that. It's called Associative Topology Bus. What I can do is I can go to ATB and I can just go check the status, and it's going to run through the entire assembly, and it's telling me, okay, yeah, there is a change. You know, I do see a different one in the folder or in my workspace compared to what you have in session for the SolidWorks file. And so maybe I could, and it also gives you a little outdated symbol, if you can notice here, a little clock symbol next to the import feature. And I should just be able to just watch this part right now. I just created another SolidWorks file without these, the cuts on the rim on the outside, right? That's all it is. So I'm going to just go and say, let's go to the ATB and update that. And I'm going to update, and it's going to update the components in here, and you see how it switched to the other part and immediately also reapplied all the changes we just did. Remember the feature recognition and everything. So this last two pieces that I showed you, which is the update, and I can now send it or save it out or save as or export this as a SolidWorks assembly and send it back to my partner, and they could work on their side. Those two are included in that SolidWorks collaboration extension license that's in there, right? So that's just a quick, I want to kind of show you, getting back to my presentation, you know, this first two things right in here, you know, that we were, that I was earlier talking about. These are the two things, right? The collaboration extension allowed me to do the update and export, and the FMX allowed me to do some geometry changes to it, okay? So getting back to some of the other extensions here that might be helpful. One of the least used extensions in my view so far by many users when PTC introduced it, it was called Design Exploration Extension, or DEX, in Creo 3. Now they're including it. It's a useful one wherein you want to think of it like a sandbox environment for your Creo session, wherein you're able to do some ideation or exploration on your design risk-free. So when I say risk-free, I may be going in during my industry days, just to give you a little bit of background here, I used to do a lot of save as and put it and give it a different name and call it something that I've done the end of that month, and I'm not yet ready to release the component or the assembly, but I'm just still in a trying out stage and doing a design review meeting. I may pull up that version. I may have certain different versions, and I know in Windchill you have baselines for that. On outside of Windchill, if you're just working on standard network folders, I've seen a lot of users, they do a lot of save as. Instead of doing that, we could explore it inside of Creo, wherein it creates what we call like a pre-modified or risk-free version, and then I've created some branching in here, right? I've done some modifications to the original one, as you can see here, right? I got different variations in here. At the same time, I can go back and activate any of those checkpoints. I can branch off in different directions. And when I check into Windchill, or if I save it, I will have this TMZ file or this checkpoint tree available for me to go back and see how I arrived at that. So there are a few checkpoints that I've created. This is available in part mode and in assembly mode. So just let's take a quick look at it with a couple of examples, and then you'll see where it could benefit, right, in your current design process. It'll definitely help you with preventing these save as that I used to do, at least during my industry days. So let me open up an example here. I'm just going to go with, let's see here if I could open up. I have an assembly. I also have a part. In fact, let me start off with the part, then I could get into an assembly. I have this simple part, very, very simple as it can get. And I do have 3 sketches here, right? As you can see here in my model tree, I got rectangle, slanted and curved. I've got three sketch features in here. And I'm going to try out different ones. I'm not yet decided which one I'm going to go with. I might even do a simulation on this and then decide which one to go with, right? I'm just still in my concepting or a work in progress stage, right? I've not yet released it, right? Of course. And how do I capture those different things I'm trying out on this design? Starting Creo 3, you're able to go into your manage session and design exploration session. I don't know if anybody have you tried it yet, but it's included in your base package starting with the Creo Design Essentials license. If you have that, you should all be able to do this, either in part mode or in assembly mode, right? What I'm going to do there, let me just kind of show it to you in a simple part, and then we'll also work on a larger assembly. If I say start, kind of like your model tree, I'm going to just say, okay, for that session, it kind of gives you a second tree, right? There's your good old model tree that we're all used to. And what is this? This is a checkpoint tree. So this is where there is a pre-modified checkpoint, right? I'm able to risk-free add, do any changes to it. Things could fail, things need not fail, what have you, but I'm able to keep adding multiple checkpoints in here. So for example, right now, I may want to pick one of these features and I want to do an extrude, right? I probably want to just go remove material, and we'll just say I want to go through, both sides in here, right? And we'll probably go say through all both sides, right in here. And here, and we'll also go and do a side 2 through all, right? I've just done a simple cut in here. I can add this as a checkpoint, not just one feature. I could have added multiple features, and I could just double click on this, and I'm essentially adding a checkpoint. As you can see, I can give it some information, so I can really add some comments so I know what that checkpoint referenced actually, or what did I do at that point. So you can think of that as a checkpoint number 1 right in there, right? You can even go and rename it and what have you, right? You can go right click and you have options to rename it. I can just I'm going to call it, that's going to be that's where we did the angle cut in there. And now I'm going to probably go edit definition and change it. I'm going to say, let's switch it back to a different one. This is a slightly different one, right? This is what we had before. I got three kind of variations in here, right? This is another one I'm trying to do. And that looks like a slanted one. I can add a checkpoint right here and say that's going to be a slanted cut, for example, right? There it is. So there's my rectangle cut. There's my slanted cut, right? I got a couple of them in there, right? So you got 2 checkpoints. What you can activate any of them at any point, right? I can also go back and say, let's go redefine it and add one more in here, like the curved one. I've been changing, it's just external sketches, right? The extrude is being referenced by each one of them in each checkpoint. And, that's really what is happening right there, right? I'm going to call it like a curved cut, for example. And I say, okay. And so now if I go into my rectangle cut, and you have 3 of them. And when you save this, right? When you say I'm okay with this, to save the model, you could just save this as a TMZ file, or a TMU file as they call it now. So this TMU file is nothing but kind of like a checkpoint file, which keeps track of all of these. Remember, it's not the same as doing a save as and keeping track of 3 versions of the model. So on large assemblies and parts, this could be useful actually, right? And whichever you want to activate, right? You activate it, you close it, and you can save that at that point, but you can always, you have this visibility of how you reached at a specific checkpoint. In fact, you could even go to one of the checkpoints and you can kind of branch off from there. At this point, I'll probably want to create a round, and I want to go and do, maybe I just right click and got the intent chain right there. Good practice, right? When you make changes to create the intent chain. So even if they make a change, it'll update. I created a round. So at this point, I'm in this checkpoint and I added a feature. I could just go add a checkpoint and say, okay, that's going to be the rectangle cut plus the round, right? Or something like that. That's a round rectangular cut. So what I have done here is I am kind of branching off in a different direction here. And I can keep adding multiple ones at each level, right? It's, you might be thinking, okay, why would you do it in a part mode? It's more applicable in assemblies. I just want to kind of give you an idea of how it's could be used in parts as well. But let's say I want to go and exit this, and I want to possibly show you in an assembly. It might even be more interesting in an assembly. If I open up, I do have an assembly that I prepped here that I could quickly open up. I do have this, let's see here if I could open up this design review. It's a TMZ file back, and then they introduced, now it's a TMU. So everything I opened in here. It didn't allow me because I had a different session. I had to erase it, and now it's opening it. And I have an assembly that I'm opening. Like I have all the files. I might have some missing files here. There is, I have a skeleton-based assembly that I might want to retrieve, and it's probably in a different location. I probably didn't set my working folder correctly, but should be able to get my skeleton part here, and there it goes, right? So what I got is essentially I got some failed features here, but now we'll ignore that. So what I got is an assembly that is skeleton-driven with different components, and I also have my checkpoint tree. So if you see currently, if I do have the arm to back type of an assembly here, and I can just go and say, okay, let's go with I double click on a different checkpoint, and it is pretty much accessing a different type. What happened here is some components could be replaced, they could be changed, the skeleton could be changed, but I'm not having to do a save as, or anything like that, right? I could even do like there's another one in here that I've made some changes, right? It got rid of a few components in there. It's not like a simplified rep that you might think of with an overloaded, assembly, and then you're turning it on and off. It's all driven by the checkpoint here where I go, for example, I want to go to this Google Office chair, right? What happened when I clicked on the Google Office chair compared to the rest of those checkpoints, I have a completely different set of components in here, and I might have even changed my skeleton, right? And I got another one in here. So all in one assembly, right? I'm able to I'm trying out different things, and I can use this to also save different variations of it if required. So just some use cases of where DEX or design exploration extension could be potentially used. And it also works in the context of Windchill or outside of Windchill. So that's another extension there. And piping and cabling, I'm sure some of you may have maybe be already using this, right? It's mainly for automatically routing, doing your 3D routing, either driven from a 2D schematics, and then to create a flattened drawing, right? Your drawing, for your flattened harness drawing for manufacturing. You shouldn't be doing all this with sweep. That's what, customers will be doing if you don't have the PCX license. And now the PCX license included as part of that base package that you have now. And I'm assuming most of you have that, right? You could choose to either just do it in 3D or you can have it driven off of 2D. Either way it works. Just to give you a quick example on the cabling in here, I open up, let's see here, if I'm going to open up one of my assemblies. Let's see here, I have a charging station assembly. Actually, let me just open up a different one. I open up a charging station assembly here, simple two-way radio charging type in here. I'm just going to get rid of this, hide this one here. I go into my cabling, and if I go into my thicken here, so you have these different applications that some of you may have used, right? In the past, cabling, piping all require an add-on extension, right? When you go into applications, it's available in assembly mode. Obviously, I have an assembly open, and the PCX license allows both 3D routing of pipes and cables, and that's also included now, right? So if I were to go and let's see here, if I were to go into my cabling in here, I do have a cabling assembly that I'm going to open separately, right? Wherein I just did a shrink wrap of the references, and I have a few wires routed on either side. It's using a harness part, a special type of part that contains all the wiring, right, and the cables. This is what I would flatten later on. And then it also has the spool information that controls the bend radius, the diameter, the thickness, the wire gauge, etc., the color information, all that, right? So I'm going to just quickly hide this. I'm going to turn on my coordinate systems right in here real quick. I also had some, if I go into my cabling, I also can import a 2D schematics XML file, right? Creo allows you to import either a neutral file or a Creo schematics file, or from Mentor Graphics, there are files that you could drive the 3D using a 2D wiring diagram, for example, right? You could consider that as a master file. In the aerospace industries, that's huge, right? Where you have really complex wiring and circuit diagrams, and then you want to route it based off of that, or you could just do it manually too. Either way, I had something imported here, so I'm going to clear that reference in here that I had, and I want to just start routing using my coordinate systems. I want to route a wire from that connector to this connector, or from here to here. How do I go about doing that? you simply start route cable, right? There it is, right? You can route wires, cables, ribbons, things like that. I can keep adding, I'm just going to add a few wires in here. I'm going to add like 4 wires. Each wire could be associated to a specific spool. You can think of it like in the real world, they take from a reel and then they cut it, right? It's similar to that. That's kind of how the spool, it has all the properties to make that wire, right? So I'm going to just go with a red wire here, right? For wire number 10, probably I'm going to go with, just leave it as black in there. All these have attributes filled in there. Maybe we'll do the blue one for this. The 4th one, I'm going to just pick brown in here, right? I can go individually to each wire, and I could say I want to go route from, for example, I might want to route from, if I go to the from, and I could just route from the entry port. There's a coordinate system that's requirement that Z has to be pointing out, only then it's going to work. So those are, PTC does have some libraries that you can download for these connectors. And it's going to go from that to, let's say it's going to go to entry 1 in here. It created a quick best fit spline, as you can see, right? I can keep adding more like this. I could go to the wire number 10, for example, and I could keep adding additional ones, right? I could just say, okay, I want to go from this entry port, and I want to go to wire number 2 right in here, and I can keep adding multiple ones like this. And or I can just say, okay, I want to go, I can route multiple wires together too. I could say I want to go from the coordinate system. I could later in a flat configuration, a round configuration, or what have you. And I could say it has to go to, for example, this one is going to go to entry port 2, and all of them are going to the same location right now. And I click OK. And what happens is, if I go back to my, I don't think it worked there. Let me just go back and start over here. If I just do a quick routing, I'm just going to create a new, it would work, but I've hidden it. So I'm going to unhide it. I just created a new wire in here, as you can see, compared to the old one. I can just go and quickly reroute them. I can just go right click and I could say I want to go insert location, and I can just simply lay it out. It's much better than you're doing your sweep and everything, and essentially laying out, the path of those internal segments of the wire. I can have it follow another wire. I can have it, that's kind of how I did this, right? I can reroute it. So just a few examples in there, and then finally you flatten it, create a 2D drawing, etc. You have the ability to add tie wraps. For example, I want to add a marker, things like that. I can add a zip tie, for example, and I can just put it in here, and it'll just show up as a cosmetic feature. And there it is, right? There you go, right? You can apply different colors and things like that. Those who are not used it, it's available now in your base license again, right? So that's a PCX and a quick intro on the PCX. Some of you may be doing rendering already, but the rendering extension, the advanced rendering extension is also included now. The rendering studio, as they call it now, it's included in the base package, which allows you to use the key shot driven rendering engine. It's a lot more powerful and a little better than it used to be before. So that's you can see how it's gives you a little more realistic appearance. And there have been some updates over each release of Creo, right? So when you click on the render studio, if it tells you don't have a license back in the days, if you used to do that, you didn't purchase it, but now you have it, So that's another one in here. If I go into any of my assemblies, if I go into, for example, like just open up quick assembly here. If I go and open up, let's see. Just open up same assembly here. We'll just open up the TriStar assembly that I had earlier. And basic rendering, out of the box rendering is quickly accessed, right? You can just go and shading with reflections, and it's really not rendering it, it's just putting it and giving a reflection there. But I can go into applications and I can go into render studio. I could say, ambient occlusion, it'll occlude the light, occlude it, giving you a much more realistic appearance that they introduced in Creo 3. You can apply a scene background, and I can go into perspective view, which giving you a much more realistic visualization of it. And all this is not yet rendered, right? As you can see, it's just more maybe for taking a quick screenshot in here without any add-on licenses. But Render Studio, as soon as you click Render Studio, you may have gotten an error in the back in the days that you got to buy contact sales rep or, buy advanced reference extension, things like that. At the bottom, the message window, now you don't get that with the new packaging that is also included in there, right? So this is where, there it is, right? You can change your different scenes that you have, right? I'm going to put some scene there. That's going to slow down my computer here, just to find out, just kind of using my graphics card in here. But I can do the real-time rendering. I can look at the scene information in here. I can, as I'm zooming in, it's going to work on it. It's going to improve the rendering here. I can create a screenshot off of this, etc. So this applications, when you click on applications and when you click on Render Studio or piping or cabling, all that is included now with the base package of Creo Design Essentials, right? And one other thing, I may have shown you this in some earlier webinars. I'm thinking at the Badgerland user group, I may have covered Intelligent Fastener extension that kind of automates the whole creation and also the assembly of bolts and screws and dowel pins, for example. It used to be an app that one of PTC's partners created, out west, and out in Europe, actually, I should say. There's a company, B&W, they created that, and PTC liked it, and they included it as part of their export framework extension, and now they have it included in the license. It used to be a light license when they got it, and you couldn't do any, customization when they initially introduced it. But now, it's starting with Creo, 3.0 is when they introduced this one, but with the last couple of years, they've been having this Creo Design Essential license that already has this capability, which is fully customizable. Because I understand as a customer, you probably don't want to use the existing library. You may already have your own library that you're currently using, and you may want to bring it underneath the AFX tool and maybe have your own little catalog in here. You can absolutely do that. The reason is earlier you couldn't do it because they only gave you a light license, not the full license that now it can allow you to customize. And there's information in the knowledge base and the help file as to how to customize that. But what I'm talking about real quick here, if I were to go into quickly, I know we're probably open for Q&A in a few minutes here, but let me just quickly show you a quick example on Intelligent Fastener as well. If I go and open up, let's see, we'll open up a simple assembly here. Some of you may have used this prior. Some of you may not have used it before. But it was introduced starting Creo 3 is when they introduced it actually. So if I go into let's see here, something like this, right? I may have the whole done, or I may not have the whole done. It doesn't matter. I'm able to go in assembly mode. You should be able to go to tools in assembly mode, and you should be able to go access Intelligent Fastener. There should be a tab for that. That's where you can access it, right? Again, if you have Creo Design Essentials, or even if you don't have Creo Design Essentials, you should see it. There's a light package that allows a few things. Maybe your dowel pins might be grayed out because you don't have the full license, but now the full license, is included in the base package. Nothing to really purchase is essentially what I'm saying. And it's fully customizable, right? If you think about if I go into about Intelligent Fastener, there's a German company that I was talking about, B&W, that they're the one that essentially created that as an app, and then PTC liked it. They're including it or packaging it starting Creo 3. So if I want to quickly put in, let's say, fastener there, I want to put in this head, and then you want to put in just select a couple of clicks there, right? And it picks up the axis and everything, and there it is, right? You do have a preview. I can look at my catalogs. Imagine having your own. I could have like a TriStar catalog in here, right? If we are a manufacturing company and we have our own, or maybe we pulled a few things from McMaster Car, or we already have a homegrown library, you should be able to customize that. This is just what they have out of the box, and you can collapse it. ISO DIN. Let me go to a DIN fastener here. I can either choose from the screw sizes, or I could say I want to measure it. I can select the existing hole, and it picked up M8 based on the hole we selected, right? The closest thread size to that, and I can control. I can even say I want to make I want to automatically change the length depending on the size. I can even go and if there is no hole created, I can even have the hole created automatically from the assembly without external reference. right? That's the key, without external reference. I know you're thinking right now it's an assembly reference, but there was a way to say, don't do an external reference, a config option, where it will create the hole using two X and Y planes of the part. At the part it's creating it, I can even add counter bore, right? I can say no counter bore, and you can see immediately it's updating in here, right? It's also updating in here. And if I click OK out of that, right in here, if I go into this part, and if I open up that part, there is that hole that was automatically created, comes up as an IFX ID hole right there. And you can control if it's going to be with external reference or no external reference. You know, there are options for it. Just like the config options, you can go to options. You can see where it's being stored. Should I store the library location locally, or is it going to be in Windchill, right? You have some options here, and I don't want external references at all. You know, as you all know, external reference is a bad practice, right? I could turn it to yes or no here. By default, it's not. Turned it off to no, so it doesn't create that associated to the axis created in an assembly, right? So that's just a high-level overview of the IFX. A few things, as I know we are probably running close to the time here, but I'll just run through a couple of slides here real quick. Another extension used to be called Expert Framework Extension back in the days, during the old Creo Engineer days. Some of you may have used it if you had that license. Now PTC is calling it Advanced Framework Extension, that allows you to quickly create these type of framework designs where in the traditional approach, you don't have to model the part and then create the assembly. You're essentially able to get into its own environment and modeling environment that's specifically created to apply specific profiles that they have built in the software, which you can customize, right? You almost start with like a skeleton or a curve. If you see the steps for it, you start off with you just go into your assembly, and then you start with framework. There it is. You should have a framework tab if you have the license in Creo. You know, again, you know, in your ribbon tab, and then you can create you have to have a sketch, of course, or you can have 2 points, and they can start putting in profiles, joints, equipments. This is really the workflow. I've just put in some steps here so you get an overview of how it's done. You put in your curves, right? Almost like a skeleton. It's not the Creo skeleton per se, like in Advanced Assembly Extension, just creating 2D curves in that assembly. And then you're starting to pick up from a library of sections. It could be in millimeters, inches. You have different types of profiles. It can automatically do a T-joint or miter cut, things like that. It saves a lot of time. Also creates your cut list table, bill of material table automatically, and can also use IFX instead of that, right? So that's another extension that you might want to check it out. It's just yeah, if I open up an assembly here, go into EFX in here, and I'll open up some assembly. I have an assembly where I have some components done, as you can see here, right? I got a simple curve, right? It's just all done in one sketch, essentially, right? Or multiple sketches, but it's an assembly, right? I have an assembly with a few sketches. I should just be able to go to framework. It's not under applications, right? It's just framework that's included now. Not sure if some of you may have tried it. Give it a name for the project, right? You can control the parameters and things like that, right? How do you want the prefix of the parts and assemblies to be? What parameters you need? All that can be controlled in here. And you can just start with a new profile. And when you go to the new profile, you know, there it is, right? I got steel beam inches, I got sheet metal, you know, go to the Bosch profiles. I did not customize anything. It's just out of the box installation I have. It's predefined in there, right? I go to, you know, so this is, and if I go to the steel beam inches right there, maybe I select I don't know, like rectangular tube in here. Again, you get different standards inside, international standards, you know, as well as, you know, let's say I go in 2395 in the millimeter metric units here. Let's say we'll go pick 120 by 80 by 4. You know, all those dimensions are showing up here. I'm not really building a model. I'm essentially just applying it, right? And I can start applying it either on curve or through 2 points. There it is, right? I can control how it's getting oriented, right? I could just middle click. I can keep doing it multiple times in here, middle click. You know, it's very, very quick and fast. You know, so many, you know, and don't worry about this joint. You can even do that automatically, right? So many options, you know, I don't know. I can keep adding several like this, right? I can just go and say, okay, I want to keep adding more. like this in there, or reuse some of them, or I could just go, okay, I want to reuse this profile, right? And I want to reuse this profile up here, which means it's the same part number. You see the tube 3 is used again. So, very much of an automatic type tool there. And maybe I want to go move that around, or I can just go, it's all available in here. And I can go to basic joints and apply different types of joints right in here, right? You want to have a T joint or what kind of joint you want in here. So very powerful and quick and easy to do, right? You can just go pick this to this, and then there it is, right? I can keep doing that for each one of them. And they also have equipment, if I go to connector element, and for example, let's just get out of this guy here, connector elements, you got, for example, non-standard ones. Even have a pipe squash, believe it or not, there's so many predefined standards in here. A corner plate is something I want to apply now, and maybe I want to put in a corner plate somewhere. I don't know, maybe we'll put in here and here, and okay, there, that's it, right? It's fully. I can go back to equipments. I could go say stairs, rails, end plates. What type of end plate do you want to put in? Do you want to put an end plate right on this profile, maybe, right? I can just go click on the profile in here and control the dimension. So a different way to do it, but it's there for you. I would not have shown it if this is an add-on license. It's included now, right? Just try those out if you have the license. It's very.
Yeah, this is Deb. We probably should ask questions. I've got 12:55. One thing that would be interesting to me would be if anybody wants to just add in the chat room, if all this stuff is new to you. 99% of this stuff was all new to me. So if any people want to chime in, if this is new content to you, or if you're aware of it, it's pretty cool stuff, especially using the other, SolidWorks files and stuff. That was all interesting to me. So we've got, just maybe 2 minutes. If anybody has questions.
I'm also looking at the chat session here if there are any questions. Yeah. While we're waiting, it's pretty much, like this. You have simulate light, you have simulation, you have mannequin, just a couple more extensions, but those are some of the things that you have actually that with the new base package license that many customers that I've interacted with the last couple of years, they were not aware it was already included now in the new packaging. So
there is one question I see.
I didn't know DEX was included. Yeah, DEX is included now. In fact, okay, there's another question there. Let me see. Recommendation how to learn more. Okay, that's a good question. So if you want to learn more on any of these extensions, I would just access the Creo help file and the tutorials. So that is there. So let me just go quickly. I think I can still see my screen. If you go to the help page, right, you just click on the help, and then it should. I already have it open in the next my second monitor here, so it. So there are tutorials, as you know, compared to back in the days. PTC has really improved the tutorials. I have to say that, being myself an old Pro Engineer user, they never had so many tutorials back in the day. And here you have, for example, you want to know more about flexible modeling, FMX, or intelligent fastener, extensions that I showed you, those couple of fastener examples. Many of these I just downloaded for the demo. All I do is I just download from PTC, and I'm just showing you, right? I didn't create any of those files. And you see flexible modeling, beginner tutorials, what does it do? You can download some files. They got some files in here, right? How can you do geometry editing? So the best place is Creo tutorials underneath your help. Of course, you have your PTC knowledge base, as always, right? You go to your ptc.com, you go to your under e-support, it should take you to the knowledge base, and you can type in, any type of extension there, right? If you want to know more about AFX, you just put in AFX or advanced framework extension. It should give you AFX, how to add a custom profile, and there are a few things there, but hopefully that answered your question. Let me go back to the chat.
There is one other question, one that I can answer, talking about will this be shared? Yes, we're going to share it on badgerug.com probably this weekend. I'm going to share it on the LinkedIn and Facebook groups, and then also TriStar will put it on their YouTube channel, maybe give them till Monday. Same thing with their website, maybe give it till Monday, but the LinkedIn and Facebook groups should load up this afternoon if everything went okay.
There's, I don't know if you have time for one more question. If you have more than one type of license, how do you switch between the two? That's a good question, Gina. So what you could do is when you, I can quickly show that whenever you launch your Creo, right, or you have a launch icon in Creo, you go to your, if you have, admin rights, of course, to change the installation, things like that, you go to open file location, and you should see a reconfigure, whether it's whatever release you are in, Creo 6, 7, 8, it shouldn't matter. You should see a reconfigure. Just click on that guy, right click, and if you go run as admin, what it should give you, hopefully mine comes up soon here. There it is, right? It should give you a similar dialog box like this. And most of the time, your IT may have, if you're a larger company, they may not allow you to do this, but you could have them do it too. They may be aware of it too, but you keep clicking next, right? And there is this customize button in the old Creo 5 and 6. It's how it used to be. In Creo 7 and 8, it shows up here. But if you click customize, and if you click on command configuration, for example, this is an example I have here. When I launch my Creo, I have two types of licenses. Some I use for my demos, some I have for other purposes. They have two licenses here. So you could go add your own license configuration here. You just go add, and let's say I do a lot of training for customers. So I got a training license, I got a rep license that has everything. So at your company, let's say you had the old Essentials license and the new Creo Design Essentials. It may all be listed here. It's just a matter of moving it from the left to the right. It's just that's all it is. So you would make sure that in my case, if I want Pro E training to be picked up, I would reorder it, or I go to Pro E Rep 2 and pull it to the left. So this startup license will not be accessed when I launch Creo, right? And many admins, what they do, just to make sure that the person who shows up early in the morning, we don't want them to get the best license. They typically use a PSF file for this on the admin side. So when you launch Creo, it should give you these two license configurations. Say, okay, do you want Creo or parametric or Creo with CSL? That's Creo Simulation Live that I have as a separate license. But hopefully that answered your question. Go to customize and pick which one you would like, right? It has to be on the right side. Just remember that's the key thing, right? When you add any license configuration, let's put it this way. Anything you see on the right will be used when you launch. Anything on the left will not be used in your licensing. Right now, all of these are not used. I can go Control A, move it over here. I have, yours might be different, right? We are a reseller and we have every license under that PTC has to demonstrate and things like that. But in your company, it may just be much more simpler. You may have Creo Design Essentials. You may have Essentials 1, Essentials 2. Just make sure that you move it over here and it'll work, So did that answer a question? Okay, let me just.
Well, we've got 101, and also I think maybe the connection is going unstable. We're getting a little bit of delays in audio, but thank you so much, and always really great stuff. So thanks so much from Badgerland User Group and all the attendees.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks all. Have a great weekend. Thanks.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to everyone too.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Larry.